Hello everyone, and thank you very much for asking us to put together a series of workshops on sports nutrition. My name is Sharon Madigan and I'm a performance nutritionist, and today is the first of 4 workshops where we're going to look at a range of different areas that can help performance by changing or looking at the timing of what and when you eat relative to your training, not only from the point of view of performance, but obviously also from good health. We will have presentations over the next couple of weeks from some of my nutrition colleagues in the areas of preparation, hydration, carbohydrates and recovery. So kind of just to set the scene, today we're going to look at an overview of the area. And I suppose a really important thing to remember is that food is crucial in terms of the fuel for your tank. Just like you wouldn't expect to drive very far without any petrol or diesel in the tank, it's really important that we not only consider our training, that we're prepped, ready to go, but also the recovery from that. But we also have to remember that the fuel tank is being used up for all of the different things that you do, whether you participate in other sports, whether you cycle or walk the dog or do all of these other things, we need fuel for those as well. So just because you've eaten breakfast or your lunch or your tea, and there may be big gaps in there, we have to look at how that can affect how you feel. So it is very important that we keep that fuel tank as full as possible. And some of the things that's really important to remember is not only is food important for the physical element of things, but it's also really important for the brain as well. And quite often, if there's not sufficient energy going into the muscles, well, then the brain can get affected. And if we think about our sport, most of the sports are going to, what you do is going to involve some element of concentration. You want to be able to repeat the effort. You want to avoid being tired. You want to ensure that you can do the next session as good as the last one. You don't want to be grumpy or moody with others, which can happen as well. You want to be able to focus on the task. And that means also as well the technical element of things in some of the skills that you're learning. So all of these things are really important when it comes to our sport and activity. And from the point of view is that nutrition and what you eat and what you drink around that can really make a massive difference in how we feel. And you have to remember as well is that one size does not fit all, and everyone is really different in how and what they need to eat. Individual preferences around foods. Some people don't like to feel full when they're out training or running, but you can actually train yourself to get used to that, and that can make a big difference then in competition at later stage as well. So we can practice some of these things, and it's really important that we do. What we have to remember is that there's lots of mixed messages out there, and labels can make us feel a little bit uncertain about what we are eating or how we're eating. Some of these things like good foods, bad foods, healthy foods, unhealthy foods, they're not great. Those kind of labels aren't particularly helpful. However, I suppose the way to look at it is as well is that, you know, we can do things better sometimes. And if we think about maybe going to an event or going to a competition, or you bring in your lunch with you or bring in food for the day, and you know there may be sandwiches or rolls or yogurts or fruit, sweets or crisps in there, and if the only things that you're eating are the sweets and crisps, well then you could do so much better. So there's nothing wrong with having those, but it's really important that we do it as part of having all the other things there as well. So you can always do better, but it's really important to not think of things that that has labels in it, because they're not very helpful for how we're feeling sometimes. I suppose one of the questions I would ask is, has anybody ever experienced this? It's really that hangry where, you know, some people really feel moody and can be in bad form, and really it's because quite often you've maybe gone a long period of time without having anything to eat. You might have had lunch and then nothing until later on in the afternoon or evening time. You may have gone to a training session directly after, you know, before you get your dinner, and that can really have an impact on how that training session goes, and how, I suppose, present you are in that training session as well. So it's really important that we try and avoid a situation like this as well. So the key thing for me really that I want to get across to you guys today is really making sure that we've got the energy to do what we want to do and to repeat the task, and to really be able to make sure that you go into each training session well prepared. And one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, do you do the same amount of activity or training every day, or does different days mean that you do different things? And for most people, you don't do the same training on each of the days. And then you have to ask a question is, do you eat the same way every day? And quite often a lot of people say yes, they do. They have their breakfast, they have their lunch, they have their dinner, but you've done different things on different days. And then I want you to reflect on, do you go into training sessions some days and you're flying, you've got great energy, your legs don't feel heavy, your concentration's good, you feel great, you could train all night. And then do you go into other training sessions where your legs are feeling heavy, you're not concentrating really well, things just aren't as good as they could be? If you feel that between sessions, it's a good chance that your lifestyle is part of the issue, because generally we don't lose fitness between one day and the next. It's really how you've recovered, how much sleep you've got, was it a really hot day and you didn't drink enough fluids. All of these things can have an impact on how much energy you have for the session. So what do you need to think about? You need to think about the time and the type of fuel that you're consuming. What are your needs for your training or your competition? What access do you have when you go to these particular venues as well? And do you have any particular special needs when it comes to food? So are there foods that you don't like? Are the foods that you know, you can tolerate better, or you prefer them? So you really need to think about how you prepare in that case. And some of the other sessions over the next 4 weeks will delve a little bit more into that. So this is kind of an example of what our fuel goes to doing for us, and it's really important for us to think about that. So if we think about our fuel tank here, it's kind of the same as level as our training, and we've got so this fuel tank here is contributing energy to all these different things, and we can add other things to this. We can add soft tissue, we can add bloods, we can add hormones, we can add lots of different things to this. Basically what happens is that some people would say that, you know, some of these might be the most important things that the fuel tank will contribute to, but actually what the fuel tank will give to first is actually training or movement, locomotion, and that's kind of an evolutionary thing. It goes back to the days where maybe there might be a wild animal chasing you and you need to get away from it, and that's the most important thing, because if it catches you or eats you, these don't really matter. But what you're hoping is that there's enough fuel in the tank to add to all of these different pots, and that ensures that we can stay healthy, our bones can be healthy, we don't pick up colds and flus, we don't get issues with some of our bloods like deficiency, anemias, etc. So and on all of the different tanks that the fuel contributes to. Now, let's take for an example where our training load might go up, but our fuel levels or fuel intake stays the same. And in this particular scenario here, we have two problems potentially. Not only does the amount of fuel that's going into these particular tanks, maybe they're not as much as it should be, but any reserves that some of these have might actually have to go into this particular tank as well. And this is really important because we might get away with this, you know, once a month or once every couple of months. And I think you have to think about you know, competition weekends, or where your training has gone up, or you might be meeting to do a couple of training sessions in a very short space of time, and that can happen. If this happens very regularly, then it can cause problems in terms of some of these. And it is really important as teenagers in particular, our bone health really, we are developing our bone as much as possible up to the age of about 19. And then after that, really there's no more bone thickness or bone density that we can add. So if you find that you're somebody that's maybe picking up colds all the time or sniffles, this is maybe something that we really need to look at. So the timing and the amount of food around your training is really important there. So sometimes a really simple strategy to help look at this is really planning your week. Look at when your sport is. So you might play a number of different sports. So it's really important that we look at where they are, because that should be the driver of how and when we eat and drink. So if we have a training session, let's say on a Friday evening for something, and we have another training session on a Saturday morning, you have to take that period of time from, let's say, 6 o'clock on Friday to after your training session on Saturday morning, which might be 10:30 or 11, you've 2 training sessions in a very short space of time. Have you increased the amount of food around this on a Friday? And are you recovering well from by making sure that you bring something with you for directly after that session on a Saturday morning? So these are the ways that we can avoid this situation here from happening, because that's exactly what you might see there. And then what you want to do is make sure that you look that your intakes of food around that are suiting the volume of training that you're doing, or for example, any competition that you might go into. And this is something, you know, we've added lots of bits and pieces into this, but you can see how that might have an impact. This is obviously somebody who's at college, but you can see that there are some days that can have an impact on each other. Now this, if we take from Sunday into Monday here, this person went for a 3-hour hike. They might not think that this is training, but if we look from 10 o'clock on Sunday right through to 9 o'clock on Monday, which is about 24 hours, then this person has done a 3-hour hike, and then they're going to do a 20-minute run. If we look at Monday into Tuesday, so they've done a run here, they're going to go to the gym for 60 minutes here, and then they're going to do another run here. And look at this, we've got this in here on a Tuesday. So from Monday at 8 until Tuesday at about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, they've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of activity. And really, we have to make sure that they have prioritized and put in enough fuel into the tank to ensure that that covers that. And likewise, on other days that are rest days, some people may not eat as much because they think they're not doing as much. But actually, what you're doing is you're prepping for the sessions that are coming after that, or you're trying to make sure that there's definitely no hangover from a day or two where there's quite a lot of training. So this is a really easy way by just doing a pen and paper exercise that you can really look at how you actually plan your week around your sport. So how can we put simple strategies really into practice to think about some of these? And over the next 4 weeks, we'll talk about a number of different things, and we will have a couple of different videos around preparation of meals and snacks that can be added in here to help you as well. And really, from our point of view, everyday foods really can do as good a job as, you know, maybe some supplements that you might be hearing about. And one of these really that can help with recovery, there could maybe be other benefits there. It could be cheaper, and obviously we have to think about a safety thing. And one of these ones here that's a very simple one that could be added in either before some of your training sessions or after is something as simple as milk, because it can rehydrate you because of the fluid and the salts that's there. It has protein in the form of whey and casein, and that can help with repair. It can also provide us with carbohydrate, and crucially, when we're trying to build our bones up, it has all of these nutrients here, particularly calcium, and that's really important, because if you look at some other things, you may not have the full picture of all of these things that can go into really making sure that you recover and prep for the training that you're about to do or have just done, and also look after some of these other underlying things that we want to make sure that our tank is full in. So again, that's why food is a really useful focus, because it allows us to build from the base, and then we can add on things depending on what we need. Sometimes when people are focusing on other things that look, you know, much more, you know, complicated, really we forget about the simple things. And really, from our point of view, if you over focus on certain nutrients, so let's say, for example, protein, we run the risk then of not getting the other nutrients, which are actually as important, but they do different things. So again, if we were looking at, say, you know, somebody taking whey protein as an option, then that would just give us protein, but it rules out the opportunity for you to get calcium from a food as well. And if we look, calcium and vitamin D are particularly important, particularly for bone development up to about the age of 20, but then also to ensure that bones stay strong as well as that as well. You know, it's important for our bones, it's important for our teeth, it's also important really for muscle function as well. And vitamin D is important for our bones, muscle strength, also immunity, which is really important, and also important for our brain health as well. So the most important source of vitamin D is actually from the sunshine, but we can get it from things like fortified milks, mushrooms, oily fish, and some other things like egg yolks as well. So it's really important to include foods that are rich in vitamin D, but it may be through the winter, it might be important to take a vitamin D supplement. In terms of calcium, some of the most important sources of calcium are things like dairy products and breads, because our white flour is actually fortified with calcium as well. So it's really important that we get that in as well. There are good food alternatives. So some of these yogurts are particularly good source, excuse me. Some of these yogurts are good sources of protein. And this is important for our bone health as well, but also can be important for recovery. And if you look at this particular yogurt, which is a Greek yogurt, it actually has enough protein to do a serve, let's say, and you know, it's got small amount of carbohydrate there. So it's not that you need to be overindulging massively in the amount of protein, but we do need to make sure that it's delivered at regular intervals through the day. These other ones have higher levels of carbohydrate because they tend to be yogurts that has either a fruit kind of compote or jam added to that as well. We'll speak a little bit about hydration, but one of the other speakers later in the series of these will talk a lot more about that. But hydration is important because really how much we drink can play a big role in how we feel. It's really important for our focus. If we're dehydrated, we actually use up more carbohydrate than we would do. And that's quite often why you see individuals maybe cramping a lot more in warmer weather. So remember that what you get away with drinking in January, February, March, you won't get away with potentially when it's warmer weather, the environment's a bit warmer, you're maybe training in warmer environments as well. So what you want to do is you want to practice, because some people don't really like to drink enough because they don't like the feeling of liquids in their stomach, but you can get used to that. And you really need to think about what you're going to drink. So really, from a drinks point of view, water or milk would be the drink of choice, just ensuring that your dental health's okay. Sometimes people will drink juices or dilute squash. If you are taking on drinks that do have higher amounts of sugars in it, you do need to be really careful about your teeth. So making sure that you're washing out your mouth with water, and the use of sugar-free gum can help protect the teeth as well. So again, just to remind you, in terms of recovery, we need a number of different things happening. We need to refuel our muscles with carbohydrates. We need to repair those muscles with protein. We need to ensure that there's enough water or fluids in there. And sleeping is really, really important as well. So that relaxation and sleeping is crucial, because we actually release growth hormone when we sleep, and it, alongside adding in foods that have some carbohydrate and protein, particularly after we do a training session, can ensure that we get a really good adaptation to your training and you get as much value for money out of your training as possible. So really, it is important to think about what your planning is for training or competition day. How does your training day mirror your competition day? Are there any difficulties that arise when you're away from home? So for example, school or competition or training or other sports maybe. And I think you have to think about, do you ever get nervous, you know, when you're playing or training, that you don't feel well, you feel kind of sick and you actually can't eat? So this is something to be really mindful about, and you can train that, but you have to practice it a little bit as well. And the easiest way of doing that is to try and do that in training so that you can then bring it through to your competition as well. Think about, are there long days? Think about the day before as part of your competition day, because you can actually build up, especially if you have to travel. Do you feel flat for a few days afterwards? Because again, that might mean that you're not eating enough, and that could be due to travel, it could be due to access, it could be due that there's nothing at venues. Do you ever pick up a cold after you have competition? Are you a picky eater? So if there's a lot of foods that you don't like, you really need to plan for this. And again, bringing stuff with you is really important. You know, wraps are useful, porridge is useful in the morning, or cereals to bring with you with maybe some milk. You could actually make your own recovery shake, and we do this quite a lot by using dried skim milk powder and maybe add a flavouring to it in the form of another powder. And then what you can do then is just add cold water to it so that it's nice and cold, and it's not going to spill in your kit bag or anything like that. Cereal bars, maybe honey for your cereals or your oats, sometimes nuts, things like popcorn are useful. sandwiches, you know, maybe in the winter, flask of soup. There's all sorts of things that you can use as part of your planning strategy as well. So thank you very much just for this aspect of, this is week 1 of 4. Again, it's important to think about this because what we're trying to do is build really healthy athletes. And you can see here in this slide, which I really like, is that sometimes in our social media days now that people are really focused on how we look, but actually we need to be really mindful that this guy here is holding a carrot that looks very healthy from the outside, but it's not great carrot on the inside. And this guy maybe doesn't look as healthy on the outside, but he is a very strong base. And actually, he's going to be a much stronger athlete at the end of the day. So thank you for your time. And I hope you enjoyed that particular session.
So to get things started, we're going to get the chopping board out and our chopping knife. On one side of it, we're going to put a bowl that can take the food waste. On the other side of it, we're going to have a bowl to take the prepared food. The first ingredients we're going to prepare are our onion and our garlic. These are a great baseline flavouring in most dishes. They work great in stir fries, curries, stews, and they also provide some added nutritional value in terms of antioxidants, antimicrobials, so that supports our recovery from all the training that we do. So to start, we're going to prepare the onion first. We want to create a flat surface which is safe for us to then cut and chop. So we're going to cut off the piece that will become the shoot. We're going to leave the hairy bottom on it. So cutting off the shoot will leave a nice flat base for us to then work with. It won't rock around the place too much and leaves our hands much safer for chopping. The next step is to cut halfway through, so you want half the hair on one side and half the hair on the other. And that leaves you with 2 intact halves. You'll then peel the onion, pulling off the brown skin into our food waste. The next step when chopping an onion is deciding what way you want it. Do you want it as julienne pieces, which are the long stringy bits? So you just slice across the body of the onion. Or would you like it diced? If you want it diced, use the tip of the blade of the knife to work in about 2 to 3 centimeters from the root of the onion and create teeth or fingers within the onion. Look out for your fingers of the holding hand, and then turn the onion and work across the body of it. When using the blade this time, try and cover your knuckles or turn in your knuckles on your bottom part of your fingers, tips of your fingers. So you then dice across the body of the onion, creating a diced onion to use. With the garlic, there's a couple of ways that you can prepare it. One is a rough dice. You just crack it open using the base of the blade and the weight of your hand on it, which pops the garlic apart and makes it easy to peel. You can then just roughly dice it and you end up with a very rough chop. The alternative option, if you want a paste of garlic, is to sprinkle some salt to the chopping board to create a sand-like texture or a rough texture to work off, and then using the tip of the blade, mash it in to the salt. Mash the garlic into the salt and you'll create a paste. So the next ingredients I'm going to prepare are my other vegetables. You can swap fresh for frozen perfectly fine, as they both have the same nutritional value. For today, I'm going to use fresh vegetables, so I have peppers here and a carrot. I'm going to start by peeling the carrot and then chopping it up. So the next thing we're going to do is chop the meat up. Today we're using a full chicken fillet. You can get diced meat from butcher's counter or packs of diced meat, which are the exact same. The main thing to be considering is food safety here. So you want to prepare the meat on a separate surface to the vegetables, or at least prepare the meat after you've prepared the vegetables. So the next thing we're going to do is move on to our sauce prep. We're going to need a jug along with a teaspoon, a tablespoon and a half cup measure. If you don't have these, you can just use a cup along with a teaspoon and a tablespoon from your drawer. So the first thing that will go into the jug is our peanut butter. We're going to use 3 tablespoons of peanut butter here. Next, we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of sweet chili sauce. And 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. We'll also put in our teaspoon of brown sugar in here for added sweetness. And then we'll add in 1 to 2 teaspoons of curry, depending on your taste. If you want it spicier, add 2. If you want it less spicy, milder flavour, just add the 1. The last thing we'll pour in here is our chicken or vegetable stock. So it's a half cup of it. And then we'll give it a stir. So now that's ready to go in the pan. So we're going to let the oil heat up now. What we're looking for is a ripple across the oil on the pan, not smoking. And then we add in our onion and our garlic to start building the flavour. So once we start seeing a ripple across the oil, we're going to pop in our onion and our garlic and start building up the flavour. You want to cook these until they go translucent, so a glassy kind of a colour to them. You'll start to get a smell, roughly about 2 to 3 minutes. So once they're translucent, we can add in some of our chicken and get it cooking. So we'll add half of it, start tossing that about. If you find the chicken is sticking to the pan, reduce the heat or add a bit of water to the pan. So when cooking, we're going to use water as a top up to try and give moisture to the pan and prevent it from sticking or burning, rather than adding in more and more oil. So that's nearly cooked up now, the meat. We're in 4 to 5 minutes. We're going to add in our vegetables to the pan, get the colour, get cooking them. So the vegetables have been in now for about 3 to 4 minutes. They're starting to go that bit softer. We're going to add in the sauce and start letting it simmer away and build flavour now. So we get the peanut sauce in there first. And we're going to follow that up with some of the coconut milk. So now, once the sauce is in and it's combined, we're going to try and let it simmer away for a few minutes and finish up cooking. We'll pop the lid on, we'll reduce the heat to medium, and we'll leave it simmer until cooked. So it's been cooking away for about 10 minutes now. The next step is just to make sure that the meat is fully cooked. So we're going to look for the thickest piece of meat we can in the pan, and we're going to cut it at its thickest point. This is particularly important for chicken because we want to make sure it's fully cooked through. So we cut the meat in half, and you want to see that it's white the full way through and that it's slightly juicy but not pink in the middle. So that's near enough done. I'll still give it about 2 to 3 minutes and then it's good to go. Once the lid goes back on, you have about 2 to 3 minutes to finish up. So it's a perfect opportunity to pop on a boil in the bag rice, microwavable rice, or if you already have it on, you might have a pan of rice cooking there. So that's the dish, guys. Carbohydrates as our main fuel source for training and growth, protein to build strong healthy bones and muscle tissue, colour to support our immune system, to help us recover from training sessions, and to make sure that we miss less days training. It's a great dish for high energy needs like the young athlete, teenage athlete, so it's a really great addition to our week. Enjoy.